CBS Sports presents the NCAA Basketball Championship Selection Show. Today's show is sponsored by Pizza Hut, home of the all-new triple-decker pizza. Have one delivered today. Mercedes-Benz, where safety, reliability, performance, and value are never optional. And by Pennzoil, the motor oil that works like liquid ball bearings.
Hi again, folks. This is the time everybody has been waiting for, the announcement of the NCAA tournament seedings and brackets. Let's send you right down to Andrea Joyce in Kansas City. Andrea?
All right, Pat, lots of anxious people out there, so we will not waste any time. First, let's look at the #1 seeds in all 4 regions. This is how they will match up in the Final Four, East meeting Midwest. The #1 seed in the East is UMass, Kentucky. The #1 seed in the Midwest, Southeast, it's UConn, and out West, it'll be Purdue. We begin the brackets in the East with Thursday, Saturday games in Providence, Rhode Island. #1 seed UMass, only the 2nd team in NCAA history to win 5 straight conference and tournament titles. They will face Central Florida, 11 and 18 on the season, a losing record for the Golden Knights. The #8 seed in the East is Bradley. The Braves pick up an at-large bid. The players will vote on Wednesday to determine the starting lineup. They will take on the Stanford Cardinal. The #5 seed Penn State will face the #12 seed Arkansas. The Razorbacks missing all 5 starters from last year's tournament runner-up team. The #4 seed Marquette, one of the hottest teams in the country, winning 9 of their last 11. The Golden Eagles will face first-timer Monmouth, the champions of the Northeast Conference. Moving on now to Richmond, Virginia. These are Friday, Sunday games at the Richmond Coliseum. The #6 seed in the East, North Carolina. Dean Smith has his Tar Heels in for the 22nd consecutive year. They will take on New Orleans, the Sun Belt Conference representative. Texas Tech nails down a #3 seed. The Red Raiders, with a 21-game winning streak, they go out in style in the last year of the Southwest Conference, and they will take on the Huskies of Northern Illinois. The #7 seed, New Mexico. The Lobos win the WAC championship and head into the tournament with 10 straight wins. They will face the Wildcats of Kansas State. The #2 seed in the East, Georgetown. The Hoyas, paced by Allen Iverson, averaging 26 points in his last 7 games, and they will take on the Delta Devils of Mississippi Valley State. They've got the nation's leading rebounder in Marcus Mann. In the Midwest region now, these are Thursday, Saturday games in Dallas, Texas. The top seed, Kentucky, upset today in the SEC tournament, but they hang on to the #1 seed, and they will take on San Jose State, another team with a losing record. First time in tournament history 2 teams are in with losing records. The 8-9 game in the Midwest, Wisconsin, Green Bay against Virginia Tech, the Hokies, last year's NIT champion. Iowa State is the #5 seed. The Cyclones picked to finish last in the Big 8, win the conference tournament today, upsetting Kansas. They will take on the Cal Golden Bears. Utah is the #4 seed in the Midwest. The Utes will face Canisius, first trip ever for the first trip for the Golden Griffins since 1957. Midwest Friday, Sunday games in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the Bradley Center. Louisville, the #6 seed, will face the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, the #11 seed, the champion of the Missouri Valley Conference. The #3 seed in the Midwest, Villanova, led by the school's all-time leading scorer, Kerry Kittles. The Wildcats will take on the Portland Pilots. This is Portland's best team since the Darwin Cook days of the late 70s. Michigan is the #7 seed in the Midwest, and they will face the Longhorns of Texas. No Southwest Conference team has ever won the NCAA title. The #2 seed in the Midwest is Wake Forest. They won the ACC tournament today, and the Demon Deacons will face Northeast Louisiana, the Indians making their 5th appearance in the 90s. Well, that is half the field. We will be back with the remaining 32 teams after a short break. Stay with us. Back in Kansas City, we've got the other half of the tournament field. This is the Southeast region Thursday, Saturday games to be played in Indianapolis. The top seed UConn, the Huskies, with an all-time best Big East record of 17-1. They will take on the Red Raiders of Colgate in for the second straight year. Duke, the number 8 seed, that is the lowest seed ever for the Blue Devils. They will face Eastern Michigan. The Eagles handed Texas Tech their only loss of the season. The number 5 seed is Mississippi State. The Bulldogs with a big upset over Kentucky to win their first SEC championship today, and the Bulldogs will take on the Rams of Virginia Commonwealth in for the first time after 10 straight years of being out. UCLA, the defending champion, is the number 4 seed. They will face Princeton. Once the Tigers secured their berth yesterday, Pete Carril announced that he would retire after the tournament. Moving on now to Friday, Sunday games in Orlando, Florida. The number 6 seed Bob Knight's Indiana Hoosiers. They will face Boston College. Talk about a turnaround. 18 victories for the Eagles this year, twice as many as last season. Georgia Tech is the number 3 seed after 2 straight years on the bubble with no bids. The Yellow Jackets make sure there's no doubt, and they will take on the Governors of Austin Peay, and the Governors are paced by Bubba Wells, the nation's second leading scorer. Temple, the number 7 seed. According to the RPI, the Owls had the toughest schedule in the country and still managed to win 19 games. They will face the Sooners of Oklahoma. Cincinnati, Bob Huggins' explosive Bearcats, the number 2 seed. They will face UNC Greensboro, the champions of the Big South. Moving on now to the West. These are Thursday, Saturday games in Albuquerque. The top seed, Purdue, first team in 30 years to win 3 straight outright Big Ten titles. The Boilermakers will face Western Carolina, the Catamounts, in for the first time in school history. The number 8 seed in the West is Georgia. They will face Clemson. The Tigers played their way in by beating North Carolina in the ACC tournament this weekend. Larry Finch's fast-paced Tigers, the number 5 seed in the West. They will face Drexel, 3rd straight appearance for the Dragons. Syracuse, the number 4 seed. The Orangemen in for the 17th time in 20 years under Jim Boeheim. They will face the Bobcats of Montana State. Moving on now to Friday, Sunday games in Tempe, Arizona, the number 6 seed in the West. Iowa coach Tom Davis, 8-0 in first-round games. The Hawkeyes will face George Washington, left out last year. Mike Jarvis promised that they'd be in this year, and he's a man of his word as they make the tournament field. The number 3 seed is Arizona. The Wildcats have been knocked out in the first round 3 of the last 4 years. They will face Valparaiso, first tournament appearance ever for the Crusaders. Maryland, the number 7 seed in the West, a Sweet 16 team last year, struggled without Joe Smith this year, and they will take on the Broncos of Santa Clara. Kansas, the number 2 seed in the West, loses in the Big 8 final today to Iowa State, likely cost them a top seed, and they will face South Carolina State, the Bulldogs, the MEAC champions. Well, as always, there are never enough spots to go around for all of the teams that feel deserving to be in. Let's take a look at some of our bubble teams, teams that we thought had good shots of making it in. Fresno State, 2 wins over Utah. They are overlooked, so Jerry Tarkanian is unable to get back into the tournament. Minnesota won 7 of their last 9 games, had 10 wins in the Big Ten. Not enough, though, and I'm sure that we will talk more about all of this in a few minutes when Jim Nance and Billy Packer are joined by Bob Frederick. They'll talk about the selection process, and right now we're going to go back to New York and Pat O'Brien.
All right, Andrea, thanks a lot. A lot of talk all over the college community about today. Let's review the number 1 seeds for you one more time. In the East, it's UMass. In the Midwest, Kentucky. They lost today, but they're the number 1 seed there. Southeast, UConn. And in the West, Purdue, just as Raveling and Buckner predicted earlier today. Let's take a look at the Final 4 brackets. The Final 4 will be on March 30th and April Fool's Day, the championship game in East Rutherford, New Jersey. The East winner will face the Midwest winner, and the Southeast winner will face the West winner. Now, let's take a look at the conference breakdown. The ACC, you got to love them. 6 teams, despite losing some big names, Joe Smith, Jerry Stackhouse, Rasheed Wallace, left school early. They got 6 teams in the tournament. The Big East has 5 teams. Some people said it was a down year in the Big Ten. Not so. They had 5 teams there. The Atlantic 10 with 4. Half the Big 8 conference is in. Conference USA in their first year gets 4 teams in. The Pac-10, 4, and the SEC with 4 teams in. Well, George Washington had to wait till almost the end, and we're probably wondering, and this is what happened, Andrea. Said George Washington will play Iowa out there in the West. And standing by live now is the man who, I guess, pizza's on you, right, Mike? Mike, I said, I guess pizza's on you tonight, right?
Hello?
Mike Jarvis, is Pat O'Brien. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Congratulations. And what a difference a year makes, huh?
Well, I tell you what, I mean, we had to wait till the last bracket to come up. I don't know what to say, but we are very, very happy and very excited.
Now, you're a man of your word, as Andrea said earlier, because last year, right on this broadcast, you predicted you would be back. What's been the reaction of some of your team there?
Well, I think you could tell that they're quite happy, quite excited, and I tell you, God is good, and we've worked awfully, awfully hard, and we've stuck together, and we're really, really thankful.
Well, the bad news is you don't get to play UMass until the finals, but how tough do you think how tough do you think the West is?
Oh, the West is tough, let me tell you. And you know what? Probably even when I really look at it, I'll realize how tough it is. We're just excited to be in. There isn't an easy bracket anywhere.
All right. Well, congratulations. Have a nice time. I would gather the pizza's on you tonight, as I said earlier. So.
We love you, man.
All right, thank you. And we go from jubilation there back out and talk to Jerry Tarkanian, who has heartbreak on this day. Of course, Tarky said that New Mexico win would have helped you. You think you got a fair shake?
Well, I don't know. That's not for me to decide. You know, that loss to New Mexico really hurt us, and yeah, we could have lost a tougher game on a tougher court to play on. So I'm still real proud of our kids. Our kids played extremely well. We did everything we could do, except we just didn't get the break at the end of the ball game. And so, you know, we'll go on. We'll just have to get better next year, that's all.
All right, Tark, thanks for joining us. I know on a tough afternoon you had a great season. We'll see you next year. Okay, thank you, Jerry Tarkanian, with a nice comment there. Coming up, we'll take a look at the brackets. When we return, Jim Nance and Billy Packer will speak live with the man who was in charge of the selections, Bob Frederick, the chair of the NCAA Division I Men's Basketball Committee. There he is. His work is done as the selection show continues here on CBS.
Bob Frederick, in his second year as the chair of the committee, fifth year overall, fifth and final year on the committee. Any special problems this year you guys had to deal with?
Jim, the situation this afternoon with the two losses by two schools that were potentially #1 seeds caused a little bit of difficulty for us. Other than that, this particular procedure this year went very well.
What would have happened had Kansas won the Big 8 title today? How did that impact that specifically?
Well, it changed the situation as far as Kansas was concerned from a 1 seed to a 2 seed. After that loss occurred, I left the room for a 45-minute discussion by the rest of the committee, and they considered Cincinnati, Purdue, and Kansas for that #1 spot. And based on the fact that Purdue was 9-1 in the last 10 games, and Kansas was 7-3, and Cincinnati was 7-3, they decided to go with Purdue in that spot and move Kansas down to a 2.
It conceivably, though, was just could have been just flip-flop the other way, 1-2, Kansas, Purdue, had it worked out the other way for the Jayhawks.
Yes.
Billy?
Well, you know, Gene Katie has had some tough places to play against tough people, but one of the things that surprised me, Bob, is that you have the city of Indianapolis without Purdue, without Indiana, and without Cincinnati, 3 teams that would be from that area. How about moving people away from their natural territory, particularly a guy like Bob Huggins, who's won now 5 straight championships?
Well, we were looking at the #1 seeds when we made those decisions about where people would go. And then when we had the bracket almost set, and then that loss occurred, then we had to stick with Purdue there. But our decisions on the #1 seeds were based on the fact that there were 2 Eastern teams in those #1 places, and Kentucky had to be in the Midwest, Connecticut and UMass. And so it moved people less if we did it that way.
Bob, I know Quinn Buckner in New York has a question for you. Quinn?
Yes, Bob Frederick. When you look at Maryland, their #7 seed, it seems to imply that their non-conference schedule had a great deal of bearing on where they got placed here.
That's exactly right. We felt like Maryland, although they had some problems early on, they were playing very well toward the end of the year, and then based on the strength of the schedule, that's where we seeded them.
Bob, this is George Raveling. Can you talk about the fact that for the first time in the history, the Pac-10 championship team was shipped out of the Western region?
Yes, we based our seedings in the Pac-10 based on the fact that Arizona was a higher seed, we put them in the West and put UCLA out of there. And that was questioned by some, I imagine, but it was based on the fact that in their non-conference schedule, UCLA was 7-5 against the 65th toughest non-conference schedule in the country, and Arizona was 7-1 against the 4th toughest schedule in the country, non-conference schedule. So that's why we gave the edge to Arizona.
Bob, the at-large teams with the lowest seeds, Cal and Arkansas, both 12 seeds, were they the last two teams to make it into the field?
Well, I would just say that those teams were among a number of teams that we considered at the end.
How about Providence?
The selection process into the bracket doesn't always match up with the seeding process. It's pretty close, but...
Why was Providence out?
Providence, Jim, we looked at Providence, and they were 17-11 overall. They were 5-10 against the top 100, and that was the basis on which we made this decision, basically strength of schedule.
Well, Bob, we're going to come back and take another look at the brackets, and I know Billy thinks it's the most balanced set of brackets he's ever seen. So after 5 years on the committee, a job well done.
Well, thank you, and we have a great committee who really worked hard at this.
All right, Bob, thank you. We'll be right back with another look at the 64-team field. All right, Billy, ready for a closer examination of the brackets?
As best we can. It's tough.
Okay. Well, let's get started first with Providence, and UMass is the 1 seed in the East, and what strikes you here?
Well, the first thing is that there is no Providence in the tournament except the city in which games are going to be played. I thought they'd be in. I think that Mass has got, I think, a nice move on in there, and obviously playing Central Florida, it must mean that they're the highest-ranked team in the whole deal. Marquette, a tough team coming on very strong late in the season, jumps out at me.
I look at that bracket, and I think UMass, after looking at all 8 of them, I think has the easiest road to the final 8.
I would have to agree with you.
Okay, Richmond, East side on Friday and Sunday, and there's North Carolina, and there's Georgetown. They met last year in the Sweet 16. If they win a couple of games, they could meet again.
It all started for us here at CBS at Georgetown, North Carolina. It's been a great rivalry over the years. The thing that kind of surprised me there, Texas Tech, I think they earned their way to stay closer to home than having to go all the way to Richmond.
I really thought they'd be in Dallas, which is where we're headed right now, Thursday, Saturday in the Midwest. And Kentucky, San Jose State winning the Big West today, and also Utah moving out of the West to the Midwest as the 4 seed.
Well, the other thing that surprised me, the Wisconsin, Green Bay, Virginia Tech situation, those were 2 of my great sleepers for the whole year, and here they facing each other in the first game.
All right, also in the Midwest, Billy, Friday and Sunday, Milwaukee, pretty good bracket right here. Possible Louisville-Villanova second-round match, and how about Michigan and Texas in the first round?
I think that'll be the highest scoring game in the tournament in the first round. You can see those teams going up and down against each other. Samaki Walker back, and of course Kerry Kittle's back. That's a nice matchup potentially there, Louisville and Villanova.
And how about Wake's spot right there?
Wake Forest, of course, playing extremely well, winning that championship today. First time in 14 years that a team has won back-to-back championships in the ACC.
In the Southeast, Indianapolis, everyone takes a look at this, and I know what comes to mind. It just pops out at you. UConn and Duke possibly in the second round.
Boy, how many great contests do they had against each other? And of course, the thing that jumps out at me in Indy is the fact that there's no Purdue, no Cincy, and no
that's
Indiana.
Strange. That's really strange.
I mean, there are 3 teams that really would draw some crowds there.
By the way, UConn and UCLA, if they were to win games, could meet just as they did last year in the West Regional.
Who's UCLA playing? Petey Carell. He's announced his retirement. The Georgetown game bring anything back to you?
Princeton always gets such interesting first-round opponents, you know. Orlando, Southeast, Friday and Sunday. There's Indiana and Boston College. Temple, Oklahoma. Temple, by the way, in Cincinnati, should they meet in the second round? They played earlier this year, back in December, and Cincinnati beat them up pretty good.
I think Temple's playing a lot better than they were at that time. And it looks like Oklahoma dumped Oklahoma State out of that seed.
Yeah, and they were looking for that last spot out of the Big 8, and Oklahoma got it, and Oklahoma State's not in. Albuquerque in the West. And what did you think of the Purdue? You won out, all right? You've been telling that story all day that you thought Purdue would get the 1 after Kansas lost, and you were right.
Yeah, I really did. I think the momentum at the end of the year that Purdue had, and Kansas, of course, had a chance to control their own destiny today.
I'm going to pick it right now. There's my sleeper team, Billy, for the tournament. Number 5 seed in the West, Memphis. What do you think?
Terrific basketball team. How about between the hedges, Georgia and Clemson go all the way to Albuquerque, play their rivalry game, huh?
Isn't that something? Tempe, Arizona in the West. And Iowa is going to be out there in Lute Olson territory.
Yeah, how about that? A little matchup for Lute going back and playing potentially against a team that he coached at one time.
And
by the way, I agree with that, Arizona over UCLA, based on what they did out of conference.
How about if you try to rank the brackets? I think the Southeast would be the strongest because you got UConn and Cincinnati and Georgia Tech. You got right there the Big East champion, and you got the Conference USA champion.
I'd agree. Southeast #1. I'd say West maybe #4. The other two pretty close, but I think they really did a fine job this year.
All right, Billy. That's the story from Kansas City. Pat, let's go back to you in New York.
All right, Jim, Billy, thank you very much. We'll see you down the road. Coach, as our statesman, notice I didn't say elder statesman, your top observation?
Well, I think, in contrast to what Billy and Jim just said, the Midwest is loaded, and I say that because 8 top 25 teams are located in that region.
They were talking about the first-round games, Quinn, and we're looking at the second-round games.
You know, that's what excites me about it. We've been talking all along about the top 8 teams. If you look at the second-round games, you have a myriad of those that can be very good games, which means the competition that we've all been talking about, it's that time.
And where don't you want to be if you're playing?
Well, I'm not sure I would want to be in the Midwest. I tend to agree with George. I mean, if you got 8 of the top 25 there, that makes that a very competitive place to be.
Pat, I was really surprised with Minnesota. They finished 18-12, 10-8 in the Big Ten. They beat Iowa and Illinois at the end of the season and won 7 out of their last 9 games.
All right, Quinn, do you have any final comments at all for the folks out there after a long day and a wild weekend in college basketball?
It's been a great weekend. Let the games begin.
George, a final comment from you?
Amen, brother. Amen.
There's a reason we didn't get flowers here, by the way. Thank you, both of you. Our coverage of the NCAA tournament begins on Thursday and Friday at noon, and then our primetime coverage begins at 7:30. We'd like to thank all of you for joining us in what has been a wild but a great weekend in college basketball here. Congratulations to all the teams who got in, and for the other teams, we'll see you next season. We'll see you on Thursday. Good night, everybody.